Well, good morning, everybody. Once again, thank you for joining me here on the beach. The sun has just come above the horizon. It's beautiful out here. You know, if you've been to any meetings at all, you're very familiar with how it worked. It starts out with the beginning of how it works, which is what we've read at the beginning of every meeting I've ever been to. You know, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. And it goes on to explain the steps and, list the steps. But when you finish that up, remember there's the ABC at the very end. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. So let's think about the ABCs. That we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. Sounds like step one to me. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. That's coming to believe. That's two. And three, that God could and would if he were sought. Now, keep in mind, this is the God of your understanding. It's not the God that you hear preachers talk about necessarily, but it could be. It's your own conception of a power greater than yourself. So immediately after C, that God could and would if he were sought, it says, being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? Those are good questions. What do you mean by that? What do I do? Well, the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody. Does that sound familiar? Heck yeah. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person's like an actor who wants to run the show. Is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. You know, that's self-will. That's wanting it my way. And that's like the opposite of step 3. It's stepping out of the way, stepping away from my will and allowing his will to take place. Sound interesting? Let's talk about it. So we're now at step 3. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. It's important to note that the word God shows up in the 12 steps only twice. And immediately after, it says, as we understood him. So we're still at our own conception of a power greater than ourselves. Taking step 3 means that I have made a decision. You know, some of you, I'm sure, have heard this. If 3 frogs are sitting on a log and one decides to jump off, how many frogs are left? You want to say 2, right? But that's not true. All he's done is made a decision. He hasn't actually jumped off the log. He only made the decision. So there's action that's required along with this step. Just because I've made the decision to turn my will and life over to God doesn't mean that I've done it yet. I can decide to buy a new car and not buy a new car. So there is action that's required behind this step. And that action, turns out for this alcoholic, is every single day. And sometimes several times a day. You see, turning my will over to God, it's easy. Kind of like Mark Twain with quitting smoking, who said it was the easiest thing he's ever done. He's done it hundreds of times. So this is very similar to that, in that I have to maintain that decision that I've made in step 3. I decide every single day to turn my will and my life over to a power greater than myself, which I choose to call God. I may have a good example for you of a simple form of taking step 3. And it was the very first time that I actually took action on that decision that I had made about turning my will and my life over to the care of God. Now keep in mind, this is still a power greater than myself that I don't have much understanding of yet. My very first time attempting to take step 3, or to act on that decision, I was at a traffic light and I was late for an appointment. I was supposed to meet somebody in the parking lot at a marina, and I was sitting at the red light and I could see the guy, and it was time for me to be there. I see him, looking at his watch and tapping his foot, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm behind the wheel waiting for this light to turn green so that I can go there. And I started to just freak out, It was something that I wanted to change the circumstances, but I couldn't. I had no power over this traffic light. And I thought of my sponsor's voice saying, "Turn it over to God." And so that's what I did. I said a quick prayer. I said, "God, this is your traffic light, not mine. I'm giving it to you." When I did that, I can't say that I immediately felt, peace run over me or anything like that. But I was no longer in charge of the traffic light. It wasn't my responsibility to make it turn green in time. Now, I don't have to tell you what happened. I'm sure you know. The light did turn green. Not right away. Not when I wanted it to. It turned green when God wanted it to. I made it to my appointment. Everything went fine. And I didn't have to get all upset over a traffic light that wouldn't turn green fast enough for me. It turned green as soon as God wanted it to turn green. Now, I know that's a very simple form of turning my life and my will over to a power greater than myself, but it's a beginning. It's a beginning that actually created some faith within me. Finding some pretty cool shells out here. The fact that it turned green in time for me to make my appointment, that was a faith builder. It was an experience that made me realize that step 3 has some value to it. Trying to control things that I have no control over, that's frustrating. That's very frustrating. But to find out that if it's something that I can't control, hell, I'm better off giving it to God, right? I can't control it anyway. Here, God, take this. I'm tired of being upset over it. Now I don't have to experience that uncomfortable feeling, that frustration of not being able to control anything that I can't control. After practicing step 3 for several years, I have realized that everything outside of me is out of my control. These are all things that I can hand over to God to take care of. A lot of us experience some fear when it comes to taking step 4. And if you've truly accepted step 3 and all its implications, the fear will be gone because you've given it to God. The emotions you're feeling about taking step 4, They're not in your control. You give them to God. You make the decision to turn your life and your will over to the care of God as you understand Him. It's almost like step 3 is the heart of the 12 steps. It's what really opens us up for change. Because we're stepping out of the driver's seat. We're handing it to God. Now that doesn't mean that I can just sit back and let God do all the work. I've heard that with God you can move mountains. But let me tell you something, you might want to bring a bulldozer along, okay? God will help you and keep you safe and do all of those kinds of things. God's not going to do the work for you. Faith without works is dead. So if you've never taken step 3, or if you're new to step 3, you can start with anything that's out of your control. There's no need to feel all that frustration. Give it to God. The more you practice this, the more you'll realize that pretty much everything outside of you belongs to God. And you don't have to be upset over it. And as you progress in the steps, you can keep coming back to this step and giving it back to Him. Turn it over. Turn it over to a power greater than yourself that can solve your problem. So you guys have a great day, and I hope to see you again on the next video. Bye-bye.